was a normal day. I was home alone, enjoying some downtime after a long week. In the early afternoon, there was a knock at the door. I wasn't expecting anyone, but when I opened it, I found a small brown package sitting on my doorstep. No label, no return address. It wasn't even addressed to me, just my house number. That's it. Curious, I picked up the box and brought it inside. It felt heavy, and I could hear something shifting inside when I moved it. At first, I thought about leaving it alone, but I couldn't stop thinking about what could be inside. Eventually, curiosity got the best of me. I opened it. The box was filled with packing material, and buried at the bottom was something strange. An old, worn-out key. Just a single key. No note, no explanation. I turned it over in my hands, trying to figure out what it could possibly unlock. I set it aside, thinking maybe it had been delivered to the wrong address. But that night, things took a turn. I was getting ready for bed when I heard something. A faint scraping sound like metal against wood. I followed the noise to the hallway, but when I got there, it stopped. Everything was quiet, too quiet. I started walking back to my room when my phone buzzed on the nightstand. I picked it up, an unknown number. The message simply said, "Use the key." Chills ran down my spine. I looked at the key on the table. My hands trembled as I picked up the key, unsure of what to do next. Then, the scraping sound started again. This time, louder. It was coming from downstairs, near the front door. I grabbed the key and slowly made my way down the stairs, my heart pounding in my chest. The air felt heavy and thick, like something was waiting. As I approached the door, the noise stopped again. I stood in front of the door, heart pounding, wondering if I should even be doing this. And then I noticed something horrifying. A small keyhole right next to the doorframe, one I had never seen before. My phone buzzed again. I looked down, the screen glowing in the dark. The message said, "It's time." My heart pounded in my chest as I stood frozen, staring at the keyhole. Part of me wanted to use the key to see what this was all about, but the other part of me screamed that I should stop. Something wasn't right. Suddenly, the scraping sound returned. This time more intense, like someone or something was trying to claw its way through the door. Panic rushed through me, and I stepped back, clutching the key in my hand. Then I heard it. A voice, faint and distorted, coming from behind the door. It whispered, "Open it. Use the key." I stepped back, fear clawing at my chest. My phone buzzed once more. The message read, "You have 1 minute before it gets through the door." Panic hit me like a wave. I turned and ran for the back door, still holding the key in my hand. As I got to the back door, I heard the front door crack behind me. A low growl followed. My hands shook as I grabbed the door handle, and I pulled it open, running outside. I pounded on my neighbor's door, breathless, terrified. They let me inside, and I called the police, barely able to explain what had just happened. When they arrived, they searched my house, but nothing was there. The front door was shattered, and the keyhole had disappeared. The package, the key, everything was gone. The police didn't know what to make of it, but one thing was clear. I had escaped something I'll never be able to explain. It was supposed to be a quiet weekend. My parents were out of town, and I had the whole house to myself. I always liked being home alone. It gave me space to relax and do whatever I wanted. But this time, something felt wrong. It started when the doorbell rang late at night. I wasn't expecting anyone, especially not after 10 p.m. When I peeked through the peephole, a man stood on the porch, wearing a hoodie and staring straight at the door. He didn't look familiar. His hands were in his pockets, and he didn't seem in a rush to leave. My first instinct was to ignore it, hoping he'd just go away. But after a minute, he knocked. Slow, deliberate knocks. My heart started racing. I didn't open the door, but I heard him mumbling something under his breath. Then he started pacing around the porch, knocking on the windows, trying the door handle. I called out, pretending someone else was home. "Dad, someone's at the door!" But the man didn't flinch. He knew I was alone. I grabbed my phone and called the police, explaining that a stranger was outside my house. They said they'd send someone over, but it would take about 15 minutes. I hung up and stayed as quiet as possible, trying not to panic. That's when I heard the back door rattle. I froze. The back door was always locked. But then, I remembered something horrifying. Earlier that day, I'd opened it to let some fresh air in and never locked it again. I crept to the kitchen, trying to stay as quiet as possible. My heart was pounding in my chest. I could hear the man fiddling with the door, trying to push it open. I glanced around for something to defend myself, but all I found was a kitchen knife. But then I heard it. The soft creak of the back door opening. He was inside. I hid in the pantry, heart pounding in my ears, holding the knife so tight my knuckles turned white. The footsteps were slow, like he was in no hurry. I could hear him muttering to himself, but I couldn't make out the words. Then, I heard him open the kitchen drawers, as if he was looking for something. I knew I couldn't stay hidden for long. My mind raced. I had to do something. I remembered the security alarm my parents had installed. I'd never really used it, but if I could make it to the hallway and set it off, the sound might scare him off. Gathering every bit of courage I had, I slipped out of the pantry while he was distracted, slowly moving toward the hallway. My hand reached the alarm panel, and without a second thought, I slammed it. The shrill sound exploded through the house, so loud it felt like the walls were shaking. I heard the man shout in surprise, then heavy footsteps as he bolted for the back door. I ran back toward the front door, hoping the police would be here soon. I heard him running toward the back door, trying to escape. But before he could leave, I grabbed my phone and shouted, "I've called the police. They'll be here any second." Then the back door slammed shut. And just like that, it was over. The police arrived a few minutes later, finding the back door wide open. But the man was gone. They told me I did the right thing. If I hadn't acted, who knows what could have happened. It had been a long week, and I was looking forward to a quiet weekend alone. My parents were out of town, so I had the house to myself. I spent the day relaxing, catching up on some shows, and scrolling through my phone. Everything felt normal, until night fell. Around midnight, I noticed something strange. The window in my bedroom was unlocked. That didn't make sense. I always locked it. Confused, I locked the window and went back downstairs, trying to forget about it. But the feeling of unease wouldn't go away. The house was silent, the kind of silence that makes you feel like something's just off. I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. As I lay in bed later trying to sleep, I heard a faint tapping sound. It was coming from the window. I sat up, nervous. The tapping continued, steady and soft, like someone gently knocking on the glass. I grabbed my phone and texted my best friend, telling him what was happening. He told me to check it out, but every part of me wanted to stay in bed. I finally worked up the courage to peek through the curtains. No one was there. Relieved, I texted my friend back. "No one's outside. I'm probably overreacting." "It's late. I'm sure it's nothing," came the response. But then, just as I was about to settle back into bed, I noticed something chilling. There were fingerprints on the inside of the glass. I stared at the prints. I hadn't touched the window from the inside, not since I had locked it earlier. My phone buzzed again. "You sure everything's okay?" my friend asked. "There's something weird. Fingerprints on the inside. I didn't touch the window," I typed back, feeling more uneasy. "Stop messing with me. Just check the house to be sure," my friend asked. "I'm not messing with you," I replied. I was feeling increasingly scared, but maybe I was overthinking it. My friend kept texting, trying to calm me down, and for a moment, I did feel better. Maybe I was just overreacting. But then, my phone buzzed again. A message from my friend that froze me. "I've been outside your house for 10 minutes. Who are you texting?" It was one of those nights where everything just felt off. You know the kind, where there's a strange tension in the air for no reason. I was home alone, sitting in the living room, trying to lose myself in a TV show. My parents were out of town for the weekend and I figured it would be another quiet night. But then the power went out. I sat there for a moment, letting my eyes adjust to the darkness. No big deal, I thought. It's probably just a blown fuse. I grabbed my phone to use as a flashlight and got up to check the fuse box in the basement. But as I stood, I heard something that made my skin crawl. Footsteps, slow and heavy, coming from upstairs. I stopped, frozen in place. I knew no one else was home. Those footsteps, steady and deliberate, weren't supposed to be there. They moved from room to room, and then suddenly stopped, right above me. I felt a lump in my throat. My breathing was shallow, and I didn't dare make a sound. The stairs creaked, just once, like someone was standing at the top, waiting. I took a step back toward the kitchen, trying not to make a single noise. My thoughts raced, searching for what to do next. I dialed my parents, no answer. I dialed the police, but the call wouldn't go through. No signal. The house was silent again, and for a moment, I thought maybe I had imagined the footsteps. Maybe it was just the old house settling. But then I heard it again. This time, much closer. The slow, steady creak of footsteps, coming down the stairs. I ducked behind the kitchen counter, trying to keep calm. The footsteps reached the bottom of the stairs, and I could hear the soft sound of someone moving through the hallway. I peeked around the corner, and that's when I saw it. A shadow moving through the hallway, heading toward the living room. I couldn't make out any details, just the shape of a person. I grabbed a heavy frying pan from the counter, gripping it tight. My hands were cold and sweaty. The shadow passed by the doorway to the kitchen, but didn't stop. I stayed low, hoping, praying they wouldn't come in here. The silence was unbearable. There was no sound at all. Then the footsteps returned, heading toward the front door. I heard the door creak open, and for a moment, everything was quiet again. I waited, too terrified to move, until I finally heard the door close. Slowly, I stood up, knife still in hand, and peeked into the hallway. It was empty. Whoever had been there was gone. But then I saw something on the floor, just inside the front door, a small piece of paper. My hands trembled as I picked it up. Scrawled in messy handwriting were the words, "I'll be back." It was late, and I was almost ready for bed, but then I noticed something odd on my phone. The home alarm system, which was supposed to notify me of any disturbances, showed that the front door had been opened. I froze. I hadn't opened the front door all day. Confused, I checked the time of the notification. 11:45 p.m. It was almost midnight now. My parents had been gone for days, and I'd been home alone the whole time. I didn't hear anything when the door supposedly opened. The house was silent. I walked over to the door, checking the locks. Everything seemed fine, but the notification kept replaying in my mind. Who opened the door? As I made my way back to the living room, my phone buzzed. Another notification from the alarm system. Motion detected. Kitchen. My heart skipped a beat. The kitchen was right next to me. I glanced toward the darkened room, gripping my phone tightly. There was nothing there. No one. But that didn't make sense. The alarm wasn't supposed to malfunction. I checked the app, and a wave of terror washed over me. The camera footage from the kitchen showed something. A figure standing in the shadows near the fridge. I blinked, my breath catching. But when I replayed the footage, the figure wasn't there. The phone buzzed again. Motion detected, hallway. The hallway camera flickered to life. This time, the figure was clear, a person standing at the far end of the hallway. But they weren't moving. They just stood there, watching, waiting. Suddenly, the figure began to walk toward the camera, slowly. I stood frozen, watching as they grew closer, and then the feed cut out. The house was still silent, but now, I wasn't sure if I was alone anymore. I stood frozen, staring at the black screen on my phone. The last image of the figure walking toward the camera replayed in my mind, but now, everything was silent. The phone buzzed again. Motion detected, living room. My stomach dropped. I was in the living room. I didn't want to look up, but I forced myself to. Slowly, I scanned the room, feeling the air grow heavier with every second. But the room was empty. Still, the sense of being watched. It was unbearable. I backed toward the hallway, my footsteps light, trying to make as little noise as possible. That's when I heard it. A faint creak, like someone was standing right behind me. I spun around, but the hallway was empty. My phone buzzed again. Motion detected, upstairs. Fear gripped me, but I knew I couldn't stand still any longer. My mind raced for an escape. Running out the front door felt like a trap. Whatever was inside, it was too close. Then a thought hit me. The basement. I knew the layout of the house better than anyone, and the basement had an old, barely used exit door that led directly outside. It was my only chance. I sprinted for the basement stairs, my feet barely making contact with the floor as I flew down the steps. Behind me, I could hear the faint sound of footsteps, someone or something following. I reached the basement door and yanked it open. The cold air from outside rushed in. Without a second thought, I ran out into the night, not stopping until I was well into the yard. Only then did I turn around. The house was dark, and the door I had escaped through was wide open. No one had followed. The cold air chilled my skin, but I was safe. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. That's when my phone buzzed one more time. I hesitated before looking at the screen. It read, "System alert, all clear." I stared at the message, disbelief washing over me. The motion sensors had stopped. The house had gone silent again, but the fear was still there, gnawing at me. What had just happened? Was it all a malfunction or something far worse? I'll never know for sure. But one thing was clear. I had saved myself just in time.